Hello, welcome. Thank you for attending our secured credit card workshop. If you haven't met me as of yet, my name is Nicole Casal, and I am one of our financial coaches as well as HUD certified housing counselors. So let's get started with the class. And before we do, I'd like to go over what the objectives are. What we're going to be talking about is that FICO score, why it's good to have a more bankable credit score. We'll be talking about what FICO is and what a FICO score considers. We will be reviewing what a secured and unsecured credit card is, how to actually open that card, and then when you do have that card open, best practices for how to use that card to establish or reestablish credit. So from there, we will be discussing where secured cards are open, where they are offered in the area, and then go over any next steps. So the first thing we're going to do is look at that FICO credit score and what does the FICO consider? So what FICO stands for is Fair Isaac Corporation. Now there are different types of scoring models. There's the FICO and there's Vantage Score as well. We're not going to be focusing on that Vantage Score. Today, we will only be focusing on FICO. So there are 5 different factors that rate your credit history. And those 5 factors include that payment history, amounts owed, credit length, types of credit, and new credit. Now, the biggest factor for that credit score is that payment history, and this makes up 35% of your credit score. So this is a very big portion. So what does that mean? It means that you really want to make your payments on time every month, just so you are able to show that payment history. So that is, again, that 35% of your score. Now, after that is 30%, and this is amounts owed. And we're going to be talking a lot about that 30% rule, but overall, you want to try to keep your balances at that 30% or even under of your credit limit. Now, the two of these put together, they make up a really big portion of your credit score. So if you are trying to reestablish credit, really want to focus on these two. You want to focus on everything, but these are, again, 2 big factors of your score. Now, after that is 15%. This is your credit length. So the credit bureaus, they want to see well-established credit, and your score, that line of credit is considered established after it hits that 2-year mark. So if you do have any new credit, the goal would be to hold on to it as long as possible. You want to try not to open up new lines of credit and then close them out shortly after. So if you are thinking about taking on new credit, try to hold on to that for a longer period of time. After that, we've got 10%, and this is type of credit. So credit bureaus, they want to just see a good mixture of credit. They don't want to see just one type of credit. So maybe having a store card, a major credit card, a personal loan, auto loan. You don't have to have all of these things, but just having some type of mixture. And then the last piece is new credit, and this makes up 10% as well. Again, you don't want to open up a lot of new credit, especially in a short period of time. Every time you try to take on new credit, take on new debt, your score does go down a little bit. And that is okay, depending on kind of where you're at. So just kind of keep in mind when you are opening up new credit, what are the pros, what are the cons to this? And do I have enough positive things to weigh out that negative that's going to occur? And just kind of keep in mind that if you are opening up new credit over time with on-time payment histories and good credit usage, it will go up. So why is good credit important? As we discussed during our Spend Smart class, having that better bankable score will help open up services in your name, take on debt at a lower rate. So if I have a more bankable credit score and I open up, I take out a personal loan or an auto loan, I'm going to have that lower APR as opposed to somebody that has maybe a less favorable score. With that, I would have a higher APR, so my payments are going to be much higher. So here there are just some examples. These are estimates on the different ranges. So if you're in that red, that 300 to 600, in most cases, you would only be getting that given a secured loan, or if you had a cosigner. In the 601 to 657, you may be given a loan or approved for a credit card. It depends on where you are in that range, but you're most likely going to have that higher APR. And then in that yellow, the 658 to 719 will be approved and may have the good rates depending, again, where you are on that range. Typically the 720 to 780 and then higher, you're going to have, you'll be approved most likely, and all of these are most likely, and have a more favorable APR. So those finance charges, you know, if you are carrying a balance, the finance charge won't be as high as somebody that has that lower, less bankable score with that higher APR. Now here we have a hypothetical FICO tree. So overall, keep in mind that if you're in that higher branch, you are most likely going to have a higher credit score. So all of these different categories here, we're going to call them scorecards. So kind of thinking about what scorecard you may fit into, and then how can you get to a higher scorecard. So for the example here, I'm going to use, let's say I'm in this unpaid collection, the scorecard right here on the right. So let's say that I have an unpaid collection and I also have other credit that's positive credit, and I pay my bills on time and I'm under 30%. So I've got a lot of positive things on my credit report, but I still have this unpaid collection. There's only so high that I can go on this tree branch, or on this tree, while I'm kind of stuck in this unpaid collection. So now let's say that I pay that collection. Now I'm going to jump up a little bit to a higher branch to this paid collection scorecard. Unless it's a medical collection, if I pay that off, it's typically going to come off, and then I'm going to jump much higher. But let's say that it was a collection that I pay and it's not one that's going to fall off. I'm going to jump in the paid collection, so it's going to be higher on the tree, and I'm still making all my payments on time. Everything's looking good. It's just, again, there's only so high that I can go while I'm in this one scorecard. Let's say now a different scenario, I'm in the thin file over here on the left. So I have no collections on there. I pay all of my bills on time, but maybe I only have one credit card and that's the only thing I have. So that would be considered that thin file. So kind of just thinking about, well, what are my goals? So if my goal is to build that credit score, I want to be thinking about how can I add to my scorecard. So maybe I want to take out another credit card, a major credit card, or maybe I want to take out an auto loan or a personal loan. So just thinking about what are the things that would help that credit score. So this is that FICO tree that is very useful when thinking about kind of where you are and then where you want to be. So for today, what is the reason that we're here? We're here because we want to learn about secured credit cards. So what is a secured credit card? And it's very similar to an unsecured credit card, but with the secured, you're going to have cash to kind of back up that card. So what is it? A secured credit card is a card backed by a cash deposit that you make when you open up the card. So with an unsecured, you would not need to have that cash deposit, but with the secured, maybe you have no credit, or maybe you need to reestablish credit. Maybe you have some negative things on there. So you would need that cash to back it up. So what is the difference between a secured and an unsecured credit card? So we're going to take a look over on the left at the secured first. And we know that with this, there is going to be a deposit required. And how much is that going to be? It really does depend on which card that you open. Typically, you're going to have a lower credit limit with a secured, and that's going to be based on how much you deposit to back up the card. So for secured credit cards, I've seen limits as low as $250. I've seen limits as high as $3,000. But again, that's something that you would have to fund. So if you wanted to have that secured credit card with a limit of $1,000, you need to have that $1,000 to deposit and kind of hold over on the side to back it up. With the secured, it's usually easier to get approved. Typically, there's not that credit check. In some cases, there are, but in many cases, it's going to be much easier to get approved for this card because you are backing it up with cash. And then with this, you do need to have a bank account with a lender or a banking institution, especially for this program. We're participating with local banks, credit unions. There are credit card companies out there that also have secured credit cards, but you would also need to have a bank account, not necessarily with them, but linked with them so they could fund the card that way. With the unsecured, you do not need to have that cash deposit. You must meet credit requirements. So, what is that credit, that FICO score? Overall, it's a risk assessment. So if you have that lower score, you're just going to be a little bit riskier. So credit card companies, they may not want to lend to you because they don't necessarily know if you're going to pay them back based on that FICO score. So with the unsecured, you do need to meet their credit requirements, which may or may not be possible. And then credit limits are usually based off of the household income. So with the secured, it's based off of how much you deposit. And with the unsecured, a lot of times it's based off of how much money is coming in. And then they have their own calculations for how much they would lend to you. Now, with both secured and unsecured, they can help or hurt you. So even though you have a secured card, you're going to use it the same exact way as an unsecured. So if you are not using it appropriately, then that will hurt your score. And the same thing for an unsecured. If you're using it how you're supposed to, it's going to build. If you're not paying your bills on time, if you're over that 30%, it may hurt you. The next area is the reporting. So both, they typically report to the 3 major credit bureaus, something that you would always want to double check before you do open up that card. But in most cases, especially for major credit cards, they're going to report to all 3. And then finance charges, they may apply. Even in that secured piece, even though you are putting money up front, there still be, finance charges may apply if you're carrying a balance, and the annual maintenance fee. So even if it's secured or unsecured, both may have an annual maintenance fee. Again, it's something that you would want to check before opening the card. And what is that fee? It's just a maintenance fee. So it would be charged yearly, and it would depend on that lending institution. So it could be anywhere from $25 to $50 to $100. It really does depend. Just things that you would want to look at prior to opening. So how do you actually open the card? So some of the steps. The first one is to figure out who offers the card, because not everybody offers a secured credit card. So once you do that research about who has the cards, you want to also research the card. So is there that annual maintenance fee? What are the typical APRs for that card? And just anything else, are there late fees associated with the card? Which there would be a late fee if you didn't pay on time, but what is that late fee? Is it $25? Is it $50? Things that you would want to know. So after you identify who offers the secured credit cards, your next step is to apply for the card. So you would contact the lender, the bank or credit union, and you would set up an appointment to come in and open an account. Once you get approved for the card, you would fund the card. And then after that, you would be sent a credit card and you would use it just like any other credit card. So knowing when is the due date, what is the minimum payment, which you would get that with your statement. Eventually, your score will start going up with that good on-time payment history and under 30%. And eventually, you would graduate to an unsecured credit card. And how long until you graduate, it really does depend on the banking institution. So sometimes it's a year, sometimes it's longer. It really does depend on what's in your credit profile. So we have the card. Let's say we have the card. Now, how do we establish credit with the secured credit card? We know we want to pay our bills on time. And then the other big chunk of that credit score is that 30% rule. So that's where credit utilization comes into play. And what that is what is the ratio of your credit card balance to your credit limit. So if I have, for instance, I have a few different examples here. I want to stay under 30% of my credit limit. So in the first one here, I have a secured credit card, and my limit on this card is $500. So credit card companies, they're saying, hey, this is your limit. This is what you can spend. So I can spend up to $500 on this card. But the credit bureaus, they're saying, well, Well, yeah, you can, but if you're going to go over 30%, it looks like you're a little too dependent on credit. You're using too much. Do you not have cash that you can use instead? So that's this rule of 30%. So 30% of 500 is $150. So the goal is to stay under 150. Now, the reason I'm showing you multiple cards here is because the credit bureaus, they look at each individual line, and then they also look at your credit as a whole. So I have the one secured card, and then I also have an unsecured credit card for $1,000. That is my limit. So for that one, I want to stay under $300. And then lastly, I have a charge card. So I have a store card somewhere, and my limit there is $250. So for that card, I do not want to put more than $75 on that card. Now, as a whole, all of my limits, they add up to $1,750. So I want to make sure that I'm not putting more than $525 on my different credit cards. All right, so that is that rule of thumb, the rule of 30% that you want to stay under. So there's the rule of 30, and then there's also the rule of 10. So it really is, if you're over 30%, that's where it's going to start hurting you. If you are under 10%, then that's going to be helping your credit even more. So kind of overall stay under the 30. If you can stay even under 10, under 20%, that's beneficial as well. Now, NerdWallet, they're a really great resource. They have a lot of great information on there. They are in the resources packet or slide at the end, which you will receive. So they have this nice tool. You can do the math yourself, but you don't have to. They'll do it for you. So that rule of 30%, keep it under. So what you can do is you can go onto their website and put what the limit is on your card, and they're going to show you, well, what does that look like at 30% and what does that look like at 10%? So if I had a limit of 500 for 30%, I'd want to stay under 150, but I could also do 10% if that's my goal, and I'd want to stay under $50 for this card. So if I wanted to use my card on a regular basis and I wanted to stay under 30%, what are things that I could use this card for? And sometimes people are new to credit and they're not necessarily comfortable using it. So really, when you open up this card, think about what is the purpose of this card. Do I want to carry a balance on that? And if I do, what is the APR? So what are these finance charges that I'm going to have? Or is this something that I'm going to try to pay off in full every month so I don't have that finance charge? So a lot of times it's very helpful if you're going to be using this for something that you already were going to spend money on. So maybe this is a service that I pay for. So rather than maybe having the card for my everyday purchases, this is going to pay my phone or my internet or my television, or maybe a service like Netflix or Hulu. So I don't even have to have my card out. I just attach it where it does an automatic bill pay to whatever that service is. And then I have an automatic bill pay from my bank to pay off the credit card. That way I don't even have to think about it. Everything is automatic, which just makes it nice because you don't have to think about it. So that could be one way to use your card, where you just connect it with the service and you don't even have it. It's just maybe tucked away in your drawer. But then in other cases, it could be everyday items, like maybe I'm going to pay for my gas. This is my gas card, or maybe this is my grocery card. So I was going to pay with cash anyway for these items, but now I'm going to put it on my card and I'm going to hang on to that cash so I can pay it off completely when it's due. So those are just some tips for using your card and trying to stay under that 30%. And here's a little thing, fun little flow chart for, especially when you're out, maybe an impulse buy. So should you buy this or not? And for this one, they're really suggesting using cash. In this case, we're going to think about using credit because we want to be using credit. We just want to make sure we're not going over, again, the 30%. So I'm going to start here over on the left, and it's, can you comfortably afford it? So while I'm doing this, I want you to be thinking about something that you want to buy. So I'm using an example of something that I bought a few years back, but can I comfortably afford it? And it was a food processor. I really wanted this food processor. I don't know why, but so can I comfortably afford it? And at that point, my answer was yes. So do you have an immediate use for it? And yes, I have food that I would like to process. So I'm going to keep going. I said yes. Do I have cash to buy it instead of using a credit card? And the answer was yes. And typically it would be like, okay, use cash so you're not adding to your debt. In this case, we want to be using that credit card. I'll just continue. So yes, do I own something that serves the same purpose? And at that point, my answer was yes, because I had a food processor, but I wanted this one because it was bigger and it was nicer. But my answer was still yes. So I had to go down and it said, you do not truly need this item. And then I had to follow the arrow and it says, don't buy it. Most of the arrows are going to get you to the don't buy it. So a nice little flow chart that's going to save you money. So yeah, I didn't buy it and it says, congrats, I prevented an impulse purchase and I saved money. So overall, fun little flow chart, but what I want you to take away is think about what you're buying and is it a need or is it a want? And how does this debt affect your credit? So, moving forward, just really be thinking about the different things that you buy and how does that relate to the goals that you're working towards. Our next slide that we're going to take a look at. So thinking about that credit usage, we know that we want to pay our bills on time, and that's what we're going to talk about right now. And we also know that we want to stay under 30%. So in this example, this is September, our calendar month of the 1st through the 30th. And with this, I have a credit card with a limit of $500. And I just want to keep in mind that 30%. So I don't want to spend more than $150 because I don't want to tell the credit bureaus that you're using too much credit. So we're going to start here on the 1st. And I have a balance of $150. So I've already been using this card and this is now what my balance is at. So I'm going to go through a little bit. I'm around the 2nd, 3rd, I'm going through the September, and then the 6th comes up and this was my statement closing date. So my billing cycle for my credit card has ended and the closing date is going to be different for each person depending on when you opened the card and what your contract says. So for purposes of this, I've already been using the card and my closing date of my billing cycle was on the 6th. So the statement date on your credit card statements, it's going to show your statement closing date, it's going to show your due date, but keep in mind that statement date, it's the end of your billing cycle, but that is also when the credit card companies send your information to the credit bureaus. So now they're going to be telling the credit bureaus that I have a balance of $150 and they're going to be telling them my payment history if I paid my bill previously. So I've got my statement date. Now, the next day, that is when I can review that statement. So I can either go online and see it right then, or I can wait for them to send it in the mail if that's what I have signed up for. So you can sign up for e-statements or paper mail. So on that statement, it's going to tell me when my bill is due. So here my due date is on the 28th and my minimum the minimum payment due. So in this case, it's $25 that's due on the 28th. Now my whole balance was $150, but I only have to pay the $25 minimum in order to consider an on-time payment. Now, if I only pay the $25, I'm still going to have a balance, but then I'm also going to be paying a finance charge. So in my head, I want to pay it completely off so I do not have to pay that. So I have all of that information in my head, and now I'm going to keep going in September. So we're going to go a week and then, we're going to jump to the 17th. So here I'm going to charge $75 on my card. Going to go a few more days. 22nd, I charge $25 more. So what is the new balance that I have on my card? So here we have the 75, the 25, and my previous balance of the 150. So now the new balance on my credit card is $250. I'm over the 30%, but I don't have to worry about it just yet because they're not sending that to the credit bureaus. They do not send it every time you make a new charge. They're going to send it at that statement date. So I know that I've got until the 6th before they're sending the information out again. So now we're going to get to the 28th and I'm going to pay my bill in full. So even though I have the $250 balance for this statement, it only said that my full balance was $150. So that's what I'm going to pay in order to avoid that finance charge. And I want to pay it by the 28th. I could pay it sooner just to make sure it goes through. But as long as I'm paying it by the 28th, it will be considered that on-time payment. So now my new balance, I've got the $250. I subtracted out the $150 because that's what I paid. And now my new balance, if I don't put anything else on by the next 6th, so October 6th, that will be what is sent to the credit bureaus for my statement. So just some information. The reason I bring this up is because I have a lot of people bring up, it's kind of a myth that you should carry a balance on your credit card. I've just heard it a lot. You should carry a small balance because that's going to help your credit. And the answer is that it doesn't help your credit. It doesn't hurt your credit because the credit bureaus, they're only getting this information from the credit card companies that one time per month. So if you are carrying that balance, again, it's not hurting you credit-wise, but you now have to pay a finance charge. So if you can help it, pay it in full if you're able. So what are some best practices when using a secured and even an unsecured, any debt that you have? So know what bills you have, when are they due, how much are they? If you can set up the automatic bill pay, this is just a great tool that some banks offer because then you're not going to miss that payment, at least doing that minimum payment so you know something is going to get paid. And then only charge what you can afford to pay each month. So just another way for you to not have to pay finance charges. So being able to hold on to those fees for yourself, so you're not having to pay them to the credit card companies. It's just the best case scenario. And then that 30%. So staying under 30%, that credit utilization, it does help improve that credit score. And it can also help you afford to pay off every month. And how long does it take for your score to go up? And the answer to this is it depends. So what's in your report now? Do you have anything negative in there? And is everything in there accurate? So I always suggest looking at your credit at least once a year. Currently with COVID, you are allowed to review your credit every week through annualcreditreport.com, which is going to be in your resources that we send out. So just thinking about your pie chart. So we know that FICO pie chart, it looks at the 5 different areas. So what does your pie chart look like when thinking about that? What does your payment history look like? Are you keeping your balances under 30%? Are you, not opening up a lot of new credit? Things of that nature. And then where do you fall on that hypothetical FICO tree? So if you do have collections, when are they yours? Are you able to pay them off in full? Are you able to maybe settle for less? Getting those debts paid is another way to improve that FICO score. And then Experian Boost is another great resource. If you haven't heard of it, what they do is they take non-traditional credit. And as we learned in Spend Smart, non-traditional credit are things that you pay on a regular basis, but they don't get reported to the credit bureaus. So what Experian has done is you do need to sign up for it, and you do need to link it with your bank account because they're going to be scanning through your bills, your payments of what you pay, and they take that non-traditional and then they report to themselves. So it's not going to be helping your Equifax or your TransUnion, but it will help that Experian credit score. And things like your electric bill, your water, your phone, Netflix, Hulu, Disney, any of those things that you pay on time. Sometimes I believe even your gym membership. So those are things, as long as you're paying your bills on time, that can now be reported to Experian, and it will help increase that credit score. So you can go on, it's going to be in your resources. It's www.experian.com, and you can sign up from there. So some common questions that I do hear a lot. The first one is, does my security deposit cover my monthly payment? And the answer is no. So the only thing that security deposit does is it secures the debt. It allows you to open up that credit card. So if you end up not paying your bills, eventually the credit card company, they are going to go over to that security deposit that you made, and that's what's going to cover that. But if they have to do that, that means you are not using credit the way that you're supposed to. Eventually, remember, you will get that deposit back if you are using credit how you are supposed to. So don't think of it like, oh yeah, I gave them this money, now that can just pay for the things that I'm buying. Nope, that's just separate. Don't even think about it anymore until you're going to close that card or graduate. So if you use your card, make sure you can pay it off by the due date. And then the next question is, does your security deposit earn interest? And that really does depend on the bank or credit union that you open it with. In a lot of cases, it's in a savings account and it is earning interest, but that isn't always the case. So it's something that you would want to look into. And then the last one is, when do you get that security deposit back? And again, this really is going to be dependent on the bank or credit union that you open it with. So some credit unions or banks, they will graduate you to an unsecured credit card, maybe in a year. You know, it really does depend. So what they're going to do is check your credit every now and then. And if it has improved where you don't need that security, that's where they may graduate you to that unsecured card and you get your money back. Or you would take your money out and close the card and then open up a new line of credit, a new credit card. So again, it does depend on whether they graduate you or whether you withdraw the funds. Here are some local banks and credit unions that do offer secured credit cards. So you would want to research the different lenders, the banks, credit unions. Some of them have fees to open them, some do not. Some have annual maintenance fees. So here are some that, that we have found and what their fees are. But again, you do want to do research on your own. And what have we talked about today? So in summary, we talked about, you know, that FICO score, why we want to have that better bankable credit score, how it's calculated, that difference between a secured and unsecured card. And then once you have that card, how can you use it effectively? And then some of the local banks and credit unions that offer secured credit cards. So here are some resources that you will also receive in your email. So take a look. We've got Experian Boost. NerdWallet is another great resource. And then some resources, just not necessarily with credit, but if you have any rental arrears or any utility arrears. So there's that rental relief program. And then down at the bottom, there's PULP, the Public Utility Law Project. So that would be helping with utility services. And then two other resources are the CDC and then the Food Research and Action Center. So take a look at everything and feel free to reach out to any of them that you deem necessary. So what are the next steps? After this workshop, you would complete our secured credit card workshop survey. You would research which credit union or bank you want to open your card with. And then when you figure that out, you would need to open a bank account there if you haven't already. You do want to reach out to myself before opening up that card, and I'll kind of explain that in a moment. So you're going to make an appointment with the lender to open and fund your portion of the account. So the reason that we need to know who you're going to open with is because each lender has a different way of getting the funds from us. So once we know which lender it is, that will determine how the funds are delivered to the lender. So you would want to let us know. After you fund that card, you're going to receive your credit card, and the goal is to stay under that 30% and pay your bills on time, possibly setting up those automatic payments, at least for the minimum, so you know it's always going to get paid. And then you want to book a follow-up coaching appointment in about a 6 to 9 month time frame. So about 6 months from opening your card, so you can have a good payment history for us to kind of review that credit. It may be that 9 month mark as well, either from our initial coaching appointment or 6 to 9 months from you opening the card. So those are some of those next steps. And if you have any questions on those, feel free to reach out to me. And then that credit card questionnaire. So this is going to be an email, but if I have any tech savvy participants, what you can do to get to this form now is you will break out your phone and you're going to go to your camera mode. So I'm on my camera mode. And you're just going to take the camera, not that you can see now what I'm doing, so I'm going to move it up to the computer, but you're going to just slowly bring it towards the QR code on your camera. And eventually, I'm like doing it right now just to walk myself through it, a little code or the link for it is going to pop up on your phone, and you would just click on that, and then that will bring you to the secured credit card questionnaire. So those are the steps. Again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out. I thank you so much for for watching this credit card workshop. And I can't wait to hear from you soon. So I hope everyone has a great night, day, weekend, week, wherever you are watching this video.